Tonight we step into the world of one of history's most remarkable souls, a man whose imagination stretched beyond the limits of his age. His name is Leonardo da Vinci, and yet tonight he is not just a genius of art and invention, he is a gentle companion on your journey to sleep. This story will move slowly, like the turning of pages in an ancient book. No rush, no urgency, only calm reflection as we wander through the moments of Leonardo's life. From his earliest days in a quiet Tuscan village, through his apprenticeship in Florence, to his final years in France, his life unfolds like a painting, filled with light, shadow, and quiet beauty. So, allow your body to rest. Let your breathing slow. Imagine yourself walking under the soft glow of the Italian sun, more than 500 years ago, where rolling hills meet winding streams and olive trees whisper in the wind. It is the spring of 1452, and a child has just been born. His name, Leonardo. He is born in Vinci, a small town nestled in the Tuscan countryside. His father, Ser Piero, is a respected notary. His mother, Caterina, a woman of simple life and deep resilience. Leonardo is their child out of wedlock, and yet his life is no less precious. He grows up surrounded, not by the weight of nobility, but by the freedom of nature. As a boy, Leonardo's world is not filled with books or gold, but with streams, stones, and sky. He wanders barefoot across meadows, tracing the movement of ants along the earth, the way light dances on water, the shapes of clouds drifting slowly overhead. His eyes linger where others glance. He notices what others ignore: a curled leaf, the shimmer of fish, scales in a brook, the delicate patterns of bird feathers. The Tuscan countryside becomes his first teacher. The hills roll gently, covered with olive groves and vineyards. Farmers bend low to tend to their crops, and shepherds guide flocks of sheep across winding paths. The air is scented with thyme, lavender, and fresh earth. In this world, young Leonardo learns not from classrooms, but from observation, from the endless details that life reveals to anyone willing to look closely. Even in childhood, he sketches. With a stick in the dirt, he draws spirals, birds, and small imagined machines. He loves to experiment, to take things apart and see how they work. A broken toy cart becomes a puzzle to solve. A discarded shell from the river inspires him to wonder about creatures long vanished. The seeds of curiosity, planted so early, will grow throughout his life into a forest of imagination. His father notices his unusual talents. Though Ser Piero is not a man of art, he sees in his son's drawings something rare, something luminous. He preserves them, shares them, and eventually decides that this boy must be trained not only in numbers and letters, but in the arts of Florence, the beating heart of the Renaissance. But before Florence, there is still Vinci. The quiet evenings of the village are filled with song and storytelling. Families gather around small fires, eating bread, cheese, and olives, telling tales of saints and heroes. Leonardo listens closely, storing the rhythms of speech, the movement of hands, the expressions of faces. Every detail matters to him. At night, the Tuscan sky stretches endlessly above. The Milky Way glimmers with countless stars. Leonardo lies in the grass, eyes wide, wondering about the heavens. What are these lights? Why do they move as they do? Already he is not content with simple answers. Already he is asking questions that will carry him far beyond the boundaries of Vinci. And so his childhood passes, gently, yet filled with seeds of greatness. A boy with curious eyes, sketching in dirt, wandering through fields, learning from nature itself. This is where Leonardo's story begins. The year is 1466. Leonardo is 14 years old, no longer a boy, not yet a man. His father, Ser Piero, sees the gift in his son's drawings and decides that such talent must be nurtured. He takes Leonardo to Florence, a city unlike any other in Italy, alive with art, trade, and the hum of Renaissance ideas. Florence is a place of narrow stone streets, bustling markets, and tall towers. Everywhere there are signs of change: the laughter of merchants, the toll of church bells, the scent of fresh bread mixing with the metallic ring of blacksmiths at work. On every corner, art is visible: statues, frescoes, delicate carvings adorning cathedrals. For a young boy from Vinci, the city feels like a treasure chest, filled with wonders waiting to be opened. It is here that Leonardo becomes an apprentice in the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most respected masters of the time. Verrocchio is not just a painter, but also a sculptor, a goldsmith, a designer. His workshop is alive with activity, apprentices mixing pigments, chiseling marble, and carefully gilding objects that will shine in the light of Florence's churches and palaces. Leonardo begins at the bottom, as all apprentices do. He sweeps floors, prepares brushes, and grinds minerals into fine powders for paint. He learns the recipes for colors, the deep blues of lapis lazuli, brought from faraway lands, the warm reds of cinnabar, the earthy ochres taken from the soil. These powders are mixed with egg yolk, oil, or water, creating paints that will last for centuries. Slowly, Leonardo is given more to do. He helps sketch backgrounds for larger works, paints small sections of drapery or distant figures. He learns how to draw human form with accuracy, the curve of a shoulder, the tension in a hand. He watches closely as Verrocchio sculpts, noting how marble seems to hold breath and life when shaped by careful hands. Leonardo's mind is restless. He is not satisfied with what he is taught. He wants to understand more. He studies the play of light across fabric, how a smile curves gently, how shadows soften the roundness of a cheek. Even in simple tasks, he looks for truth. There is a story told of this time. Verrocchio was working on a painting of the baptism of Christ. He allowed his young apprentice, Leonardo, to paint one of the angels in the scene. When the work was complete, the angel Leonardo painted shone with a softness and grace unlike the others. Its face luminous, its posture natural, its expression full of life. The master himself is said to have been astonished, perhaps even humbled, by the beauty that flowed from Leonardo's hand. Some claim Verrocchio put down his brush, declaring that his student had surpassed him. Whether legend or truth, what matters is this. Leonardo was no longer simply a boy learning. He was becoming an artist whose vision was uniquely his own. Life in Florence was full of inspiration. He watched the crowds in the market, merchants bargaining, women carrying baskets, children chasing pigeons, and filled his sketchbooks with their movements. He studied musicians playing lutes and flutes, capturing their expressions in quick strokes. He drew not just what he saw, but what he felt: curiosity, joy, thought. In Verrocchio's workshop, Leonardo also discovered the union of art and science. He learned that to paint a body well, one must understand its bones and muscles. To capture light, one must observe how it reflects and bends. To design, one must imagine not only form but also function. For Leonardo, the line between artist and scientist was never sharp. They were the same pursuit: to understand and to create. His years in Florence shaped him deeply. The city's architecture, its politics, its vibrant artistic community, all gave him a foundation on which his genius would build. Yet even here, as a young apprentice, one could see in his notebooks the beginnings of something greater. In the margins of sketches, he drew machines of his own invention: bridges, pulleys, fantastical contraptions. His imagination was already stretching beyond the canvas, beyond marble, toward the endless possibilities of the human mind. As his apprenticeship grew, so too did his reputation. He began to take small commissions, works of his own, though still under the shadow of Verrocchio's name. His paintings revealed a sensitivity to detail, a grace in posture, a softness in expression. Faces looked alive, as though their thoughts might spill from the canvas at any moment. And yet Leonardo was never in a hurry. He worked slowly, often leaving pieces unfinished, more interested in discovery than in completion. His perfectionism, his endless need to improve, would follow him throughout life. In Florence, Leonardo learned not just how to paint and sculpt, but how to see. He learned that the world itself was a masterpiece, waiting to be observed. And so, from a boy in a small Tuscan village, he had become an artist of Florence, standing at the threshold of greatness. Leonardo was unlike other artists of his time. For him, the canvas was only one window into truth. The real masterpiece, the one he sought all his life, was the world itself. He carried with him, always, a small notebook, its leather cover worn, its pages filled with ink and drawings. Wherever he went, whether the streets of Florence, the gardens of villas, or the quiet banks of rivers, he paused to sketch. Inside these pages, the world unfolded. A dragonfly's wings, drawn with delicate precision, the curl of smoke rising from a flame, the way water spirals when it flows into a pool. Nothing was too small for his attention. He even wrote in a curious way, backwards from right to left, so that the words could only be read in a mirror. Some believe it was to keep his notes secret. Others say it was simply easier for a left-handed man. Whatever the reason, the mirrored script gave his notebooks a mysterious air, as though they were messages not only to himself but to the future. In these notebooks, one finds not confessions or stories of daily life, but endless questions. Leonardo did not write of who he met or what he ate. Instead, he filled page after page with wonder. He asked, how do birds remain aloft? What force moves the heart? How does light travel through air? Each drawing, each word, was a step toward understanding. He loved water most of all. To him, water was alive, the blood of the earth. He studied its flow in rivers, the way it carves stone, the way waves overlapped upon the sea. He sketched whirlpools and rapids, fountains and raindrops. He saw in its patterns the rhythms of the universe itself. Animals, too, fascinated him. He would stop to watch cats stretch in the sun, horses gallop across fields, birds rise into the air. His drawings capture their muscles, their movements, their grace. He bought caged birds at markets only to open their doors and set them free, watching with joy as they vanished into the sky. To Leonardo, nothing was ordinary. The curl of hair, the reflection of light in an eye, the veins of a leaf, each was a doorway into mystery, and always beyond what he observed, he imagined. He designed machines that had never existed, flying devices with wings like bats, armored vehicles with rotating cannons, bridges that folded and unfolded like the wings of a butterfly. Though many of these designs were far beyond the technology of his time, they reveal how Leonardo's mind moved. He did not see limits. He saw possibilities. The world to him was a puzzle waiting to be solved, a story waiting to be told. At night by lamplight, he would sit in silence, pen in hand, sketching long after others had gone to bed. The scratching of his quill on parchment was the sound of thought itself. Ideas flowed from him like rivers, too many to finish, too many to contain. In these moments, he was not just an artist. He was a philosopher, a scientist, a poet of observation. His notebooks are not merely pages of ink. They are windows into a mind that refused to stop wondering. And so, Leonardo da Vinci became not just a creator of paintings, but a student of life itself. To him, every detail mattered, every movement, every shadow, every star. He once wrote, "Learning never exhausts the mind." And for Leonardo, this was true. For the more he learned, the more awake his mind became. It is the year 1482. Leonardo, now in his early 30s, leaves Florence and travels north to Milan. His decision is bold. Florence is the home of art, but Milan offers opportunity of another kind. The city is ruled by Ludovico Sforza, called Il Moro, the Duke. His court is one of power, spectacle, and ambition. Before arriving, Leonardo writes a letter to the Duke. In it, he does not speak first of painting, but of engineering. He lists his skills, the design of bridges, fortresses, canals, weapons of war. He offers himself as a builder of machines. Only at the end, almost as an afterthought, does he mention that he can also paint. The Duke accepts him, and so Leonardo enters a new chapter of life, not only as an artist, but as an engineer, designer, and master of spectacle. Milan is a city of stone and grandeur, with wide streets and busy markets. Its castle rises tall, a fortress of power. Inside, the court is alive with music, feasts, and intrigue. For the Duke, art is not only beauty, it is prestige, a symbol of wealth and dominance. Leonardo, with his many talents, becomes invaluable. He designs pageants and festivals, filling the court with marvels. He creates costumes, stage machines, and moving decorations that astonish audiences. He imagines mechanical lions that walk, birds that flap their wings, and great parades where myth and history blend. To the people of Milan, these spectacles seem magical. To Leonardo, they are experiments, tests of imagination and motion. But it is also here that he paints one of his greatest works, The Last Supper. On the wall of the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie, Leonardo creates not just a painting, but a vision. The moment he chooses is not serene, but alive with emotion. The instant Jesus tells his disciples that one of them will betray him. Around the long table, each figure reacts differently. Surprise, anger, disbelief, sorrow. Their faces are human, their gestures natural, their movements alive. In the center, Christ sits calm, his figure forming a still point among the chaos, his hands open as though embracing both fate and forgiveness. The perspective draws the eye directly to him, anchoring the scene in balance. Leonardo experiments with his materials, mixing tempera with oil instead of using traditional fresco. The effect is luminous, softer, more subtle, but the choice is fragile. Even during his lifetime, the paint begins to fade, flake, and decay. And yet, despite its fragility, The Last Supper endures as one of the most powerful images in Western art. Beyond painting, Leonardo works on grand projects for the Duke. He designs canals to improve trade, fortifications to defend the city, and machines for both work and war. He studies architecture, anatomy, music. His notebooks of this period are filled with ideas, sketches, and notes that range from the practical to the fantastical. His daily life is both structured and wandering. He wears simple clothing, often pink or purple tunics, elegant but not extravagant. He is a vegetarian, rare in his time, and he speaks gently, preferring humor and conversation over argument. Those who meet him describe him as charming, graceful, and endlessly curious. In Milan, he also begins work on a monumental sculpture, a bronze horse larger than any ever attempted. It is meant to honor the Duke's father, a symbol of strength and pride. Leonardo studies horses endlessly, sketching them from every angle, observing their muscles, their movements. He creates a giant clay model, awe-inspiring in its size and detail. But the bronze to cast it is never poured. When war threatens Milan, the metal is taken for cannons. The great horse, though admired, is destroyed, never to be completed. Still, Leonardo's time in Milan is a flowering of creativity. He is no longer just a painter, no longer just an apprentice. He is a master in his own right, shaping the life of a city, weaving together art, science, and wonder. Years pass. Festivals are held, paintings admired, notebooks filled. And though many of his projects remain unfinished, Leonardo's presence leaves a mark on Milan that will never fade. To speak of Leonardo's genius is to speak of endless ideas. But to understand him as a man, we must look at the quiet details of his days. For it was in the ordinary rhythms of life that his extraordinary mind found space to wander. Leonardo's appearance was striking. He was tall for his time, graceful in movement, and wore his beard long and flowing, a silvery frame around his face. He often dressed in soft, colorful tunics, sometimes rose-colored, sometimes shades of lavender or purple. His clothing was simple but elegant, showing taste without vanity. Wherever he went, people noticed not only his appearance, but the calm dignity with which he carried himself. He was gentle in manner. He disliked conflict and rarely raised his voice. Instead, he charmed with wit, riddles, and gentle humor. He loved to tell short fables, stories of animals and nature that revealed small truths about life. His companions often remembered these tales with laughter, for they carried wisdom wrapped in playfulness. Food was a subject close to his heart. Leonardo was unusual in his time for being a vegetarian. He saw the beauty and dignity in animals and believed it wrong to harm them. He would buy birds in cages at markets, only to open the doors and release them into the sky. Watching them flutter away gave him joy, a reminder of freedom and the fragile wonder of life. He also enjoyed the pleasures of the table in moderation. Bread, fruits, vegetables, olives, and wine accompanied his meals. He was fascinated by the preparation of food and even designed kitchen tools and devices, ideas for roasting spits, for ovens, for machines that might ease the work of cooks. Always invention followed him, even into dining. Leonardo loved company, but he also loved solitude. He could spend hours among friends, entertaining them with stories, music, or sketches. He was known to play the lyre with great skill, filling rooms with music that flowed like water. And yet, when the gathering ended, he would just as easily retreat to a quiet space, notebook in hand, vanishing into the silence of thought. He had a curious relationship with time. For Leonardo, projects were not always to be finished quickly. He lingered, revised, and sometimes abandoned works altogether when they no longer captured his imagination. Patrons grew frustrated with his delays, yet those who truly knew him understood. It was not laziness, but an endless search for perfection. He did not want to create many works. He wanted each to contain the truth of what he saw. Animals and nature remained constant companions. Cats fascinated him, their graceful movements and sudden bursts of energy. Horses, too. He studied their anatomy tirelessly, filling page after page with sketches of their muscles and poses. He once wrote that the nobility of a horse was unmatched, a creature of both strength and beauty. Leonardo was also deeply spiritual, though not in the strict sense of religion. He believed in a divine order in nature, a harmony that could be seen in patterns, proportions, and the balance of the world. To him, God's presence was not confined to temples, but revealed in rivers, trees, and the stars above. Visitors who met him often left with a sense of calm. They spoke of his presence as both gentle and powerful, as though his mind was always reaching beyond the moment, but his heart remained grounded in kindness. Evenings often found him writing or sketching by lamplight. His desk would be scattered with tools, quills, ink, rulers, compasses, scraps of parchment. The flame flickered across his notes, casting shadows that moved like the ideas in his head. Restless, shifting, always alive. And yet, for all his brilliance, Leonardo was human. He sometimes left debts unpaid, promises unkept. He grew distracted, wandering into new projects before completing the old. His perfectionism was both a gift and a burden, pushing him toward greatness but leaving much unfinished. Still, in the gentle rhythms of his daily life, one sees a portrait of balance, art and science, solitude and friendship, discipline and wonder. Leonardo once wrote, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a well-spent life brings happy death." His life, with all its wanderings and unfinished dreams, was indeed well spent, filled with curiosity, compassion, and the quiet beauty of observing the world. For Leonardo, the body was a world within a world. He saw in it the same harmony that guided rivers, trees, and stars. If nature was the great book of knowledge, then the human form was its most exquisite chapter. By day, he painted faces filled with life and light. By night, in silence and secrecy, he turned to study the mechanics beneath that life, the framework of bone, the map of veins, the chambers of the heart. In dimly lit rooms, he worked by candle flame, carefully examining cadavers, recording every discovery in his notebooks. At first it was curiosity, how muscles flexed when a limb bent, how tendons stretched, how bones carried the weight of the body. He drew shoulders, arms, hands, studying their strength and grace. His sketches revealed not only accuracy, but also reverence, each drawing a portrait of nature's design. As his studies deepened, he moved to more complex mysteries. He dissected the chest, discovering how ribs curved like the arches of cathedrals. He examined the heart, noting the way valves directed the flow of blood. He traced veins like rivers through the body, mapping their endless branching. His drawings became masterpieces of clarity, the twist of a spine, the curl of intestines, the layered muscles of the face, all captured with precision. Centuries before modern medicine, Leonardo was recording details that would not be confirmed until long after his death. Yet these studies were not published. His notes remained private, hidden in his mirrored script, seen by few in his lifetime. For Leonardo, this work was not for fame, but for understanding. He wanted to know how life worked, not only to paint it more truly, but to grasp the divine architecture within us all. Even in this, beauty was his guide. He once wrote, "The human foot is a masterpiece of engineering and a work of art. To him, the body was both machine and miracle, function and form united. There was a tenderness in his studies. Though he worked with the dead, he honored them by transforming their silence into knowledge. Each sketch was a kind of remembrance, a way to show that even in death, the human body spoke of wonder. He compared the body to the earth itself. Bones were its rocks, veins its rivers, flesh its soil. Just as water nourished the land, blood nourished the body. In these patterns, he saw unity, the universe repeating itself at every scale. By candlelight, the scratch of his quill filled the room. Pages turned, filled with notes and sketches, lungs breathing, jaws chewing, eyes focusing. His hand never tired, his mind never stilled. And though much of his work in anatomy was hidden, it remains one of his greatest legacies. His drawings, discovered centuries later, revealed the depth of his genius not only as an artist, but as a scientist. For Leonardo, to paint a smile was to study the muscles that made it possible. To paint a gesture was to know the bones and tendons beneath. To capture life was to honor the hidden structures that sustained it. He sought truth in flesh as he did in stone, in water, in sky, always observing, always recording, always marveling at the perfection of nature's design. In the end, his anatomy was not only science, it was poetry. A way of saying, here in the human body lies the mystery of life itself. Since boyhood, Leonardo had lifted his eyes to the heavens. In Vinci, he watched kites circle above the Tuscan hills. In Florence, he studied pigeons darting between rooftops. In Milan, he paused to follow the shadows of swallows across sunlit courtyards. Wherever he went, his gaze returned to the sky, drawn by the mystery of flight. To Leonardo, birds were not just creatures, they were teachers. He studied the way wings curved, the rhythm of flapping, the silent glide when air carried them upward. He captured each detail in his notebooks. Feathers spread like fingers, tails steering with delicate precision, the powerful thrust of muscles hidden beneath fragile forms. He wrote that the bird is a model of freedom, an instrument working according to mathematical law. In its wings, he saw geometry. In its soaring, he saw the harmony of forces invisible to the eye. His imagination soon took shape in invention. He sketched machines with wide wooden wings inspired by bats and birds. Some spread like great fans, others folded like an insect's delicate frame. Ropes and pulleys would allow a human pilot to flap these wings, imitating the movements of nature. He also imagined devices that rose not by flapping, but by steady rotation. A sketch shows a spiral like a giant screw designed to twist into the air. This aerial screw, centuries before the modern helicopter, reveals how Leonardo's mind leapt beyond his time. Though his machines were never built to success, they were dreams etched in ink, visions of what humanity might one day achieve. He tested his ideas in thought, in models, in endless observation. He believed the key to flight lay not only in strength, but in balance, in understanding how air itself flowed. He watched how wind moved across hillsides, how smoke twisted upward, how seeds from trees floated on breezes. Often he would write about the sensation of flight as though he had already known it. Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward. For Leonardo, the dream of flying was not merely escape, but a metaphor, proof that humanity's spirit longed always to rise beyond limits. At night, under the stars, he would sketch by lamplight, wings of wood, harnesses of leather, screws of canvas. His notebooks became aviaries of the imagination, filled with machines perched on the edge of possibility. Though he never soared into the sky, his drawings carried him there. And centuries later, others would follow the path he traced in thought, until flight became reality. To Leonardo, the bird's wing and the human hand were alike, both miracles of design, both proof that nature is the greatest engineer. His dream of flight was not failure but prophecy, a whisper that one day humanity would indeed rise on wings of its own. And so, even as he walked upon the earth, his spirit was always aloft, carried by the vision of sky. By the early 1500s, Leonardo was no longer the young apprentice of Florence, nor the court entertainer of Milan. He was now a man in his 50s, known throughout Italy as a painter of rare skill and a thinker of boundless curiosity. Yet with age came new challenges, shifting patrons, political upheavals, and the rising presence of other brilliant artists. In 1513, Leonardo traveled to Rome. The city was a place of grandeur and faith, its skyline dominated by churches, palaces, and the growing power of the Vatican. Pope Leo X welcomed artists into his service, for art was both devotion and display, proof of the church's glory. Leonardo found himself in the company of younger rivals. Michelangelo, fierce and passionate, was carving his visions into marble. Raphael, graceful and charming, was filling the papal chambers with luminous frescoes. The energy of Rome was electric with creation. Yet for Leonardo, it was also a time of difficulty. He was given few major commissions, and those that came often faded before reaching completion. He sketched designs for churches, fortifications, and hydraulic systems, but many remained on paper. He studied light for new paintings but left canvases unfinished. His mind wandered across too many landscapes, and his perfectionism slowed every hand that tried to bring vision into reality. Still, he worked. He returned to his studies of anatomy, observing the heart with particular fascination. He dissected oxen, sketching the chambers, the valves, the spiraling motion of blood. He imagined that the heart was not just a pump, but a symbol, the seat of spirit and life itself. His notes, written quietly in mirrored script, recorded truths about circulation that would not be recognized by science for centuries. He also studied plants in exquisite detail. In his Roman notebooks, one finds leaves, flowers, and seeds drawn with tender care, as though he knew that the smallest blade of grass carried as much beauty as the grandest cathedral dome. The city around him buzzed with ambition, but Leonardo often withdrew into silence. He preferred the company of his students, particularly a young man named Francesco Melzi, who would remain by his side until the end of his life. Together they worked on drawings, experiments, and gentle walks through gardens, where Leonardo's thoughts flowed freely, unconstrained by deadlines or demands. Patrons grew impatient. They wanted paintings finished quickly, sculptures carved without delay. But Leonardo could not change his nature. To him, art was never about speed. It was about truth. And truth revealed itself slowly, like the growth of a tree or the flowing of a river. Even so, his reputation remained luminous. He was still called upon for advice on architecture, on engineering, on water projects for the city. When others needed wisdom that crossed disciplines, they turned to Leonardo, the man who could see both the part and the whole, both detail and design. In these years, he began one of his final paintings, Saint John the Baptist. The figure emerges from shadow, pointing upward with a mysterious smile. The painting feels less like an image of a saint and more like a whisper of secret knowledge, a message to look beyond the visible into the unseen. Rome was both a place of isolation and reflection for Leonardo. Surrounded by younger artists who burned quickly with brilliance, he remained steady, thoughtful, often silent. He was like a deep river flowing beneath the surface, unseen but powerful. And though many works remained unfinished, the notebooks of this time overflow with beauty. Designs of machines, careful diagrams of plants and bodies, lists of riddles and proverbs. A tapestry of thought that revealed a mind still alive with curiosity, still restless, still searching. For Leonardo, Rome was not about fame. It was about continuing the lifelong journey of observing, questioning, and wondering. Even as others sought glory in marble and fresco, he remained the quiet witness to the mysteries of the world. In 1516, Leonardo was 64 years old. His hair was long, his beard silver, his body slower than before, yet his mind still wandered freely, filled with sketches, questions, and dreams. It was then that he received an invitation that would change the last chapter of his life. King Francis I of France admired Leonardo deeply. To the young king, Leonardo was more than an artist. He was a symbol of genius, a man whose presence could bring glory to his court. Francis invited Leonardo to live in France, offering him a home, comfort, and the title of premier painter, engineer, and architect to the king. Leonardo accepted. Leaving Italy behind, he crossed the Alps with his loyal pupils and his notebooks, carrying with him his most treasured works. Among them, the Mona Lisa, carefully packed for the journey. His new home was the Château de Clos-Lucé, a manor near the royal Château of Amboise. The estate was surrounded by gardens, streams, and gentle hills. Here Leonardo found peace. The air was fresh, the pace of life slower, and though his body grew weaker, his spirit remained lively. At Clos-Lucé, Leonardo no longer took on great public commissions. Instead, he devoted himself to reflection, to teaching his students, and to refining ideas in his notebooks. He walked the gardens, studying plants and insects. He sketched designs for canals, bridges, and machines that existed only in thought. He entertained guests with conversation, filling evenings with stories, riddles, and gentle humor. King Francis often visited him. The king, still young, admired the old master with affection and respect. He saw in Leonardo not only an artist but a wise friend. They spoke for hours of philosophy, nature, and the mysteries of the universe. The king is said to have called Leonardo a man who has never been equaled nor ever will be. Though his hands trembled and painting became difficult, Leonardo's mind remained restless. He organized his drawings, refined his notes, and dictated thoughts to his pupils. He reflected on a life filled with wonder and perhaps with unfinished dreams. In these quiet years, Leonardo was not chasing deadlines, nor pleasing impatient patrons. He was simply living, observing, teaching, and preparing for rest. His notebooks from this time carry reflections that are gentle, philosophical, almost like whispers to himself. Reminders that life, like art, is never truly finished, only paused. On May 2nd, 1519, Leonardo da Vinci passed away at Clos-Lucé. He was 67 years old. It is said that King Francis himself was near, holding him in his final moments, mourning the loss of a man he called his friend. Leonardo's body was laid to rest in Amboise. His notebooks, his drawings, his ideas, many of them unfinished, remained behind, scattered like seeds for future generations to discover. The house at Clos-Lucé grew quiet, but the echo of his presence lingered. The garden paths where he walked, the desk where he sketched by lamplight, the halls where his voice once carried stories of art and invention. His final years were not marked by grand monuments or public triumphs, but by calm reflection, companionship, and peace. For a man who had spent his life in restless pursuit of knowledge, the gentle embrace of the French countryside was a fitting place to rest. And so, the story of Leonardo da Vinci reaches its end. From a boy wandering the Tuscan hills with curious eyes to a master whose ideas touched art, science, and dreams, his life was a journey of wonder. He was never simply a painter, never simply an inventor. He was a listener of nature, a witness to the patterns of water and sky, a student of the human body and soul. For Leonardo, the world itself was the greatest masterpiece, a painting drawn by the hand of creation, waiting to be studied, understood, and loved. Not everything he imagined came to life. Many of his machines remained sketches, many of his projects unfinished, and yet his notebooks carried seeds for centuries to come. The wings of airplanes, the maps of anatomy, the curves of bridges and canals, all whisper of him, even long after his passing. What makes Leonardo timeless is not only what he achieved, but how he looked at the world. He believed that learning never ended, that curiosity was a gift, that beauty lived not just in paintings, but in shadows on walls, in ripples on water, in the smile of a stranger. When we think of him now, we see the Mona Lisa's quiet gaze, the Last Supper's human drama, the notebooks filled with lines of mirrored script. But perhaps what he would wish us to see is simpler still, the way a bird lifts into the sky, the way light rests gently on a face, the way questions lead us onward. As you drift into rest, imagine walking beside him one last time. The Tuscan sun warms the hills, olive trees sway, streams murmur softly. Leonardo carries his notebook, pausing to sketch a leaf or to watch how the wind moves a blade of grass. His eyes sparkle with wonder, not because he has all the answers, but because the world is full of questions yet to be asked. He once wrote, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a well-spent life brings happy death." And so it was with him, a life not of riches or crowns, but of endless curiosity, a life that continues to inspire centuries later. Now close your eyes. Let the story fade into silence. Let Leonardo's gentle spirit remain with you. His love of beauty, his search for truth, his quiet joy in observing the world. Rest deeply as he once did, and dream of flight, of rivers, of stars. Dream of a world seen through the eyes of Leonardo da Vinci,